with what he's doing right. Usually I'm like, this is what's frustrating me. This is what I need. I'm aware you've done this, but. And so what I found is that a lot of times he will shut down in our communication because I'm not thinking from a place like I should treat him like I treat my employee. My thing is, you my husband, let's cut past all the constructive feedback. I feel like I do my job in acknowledging what I think you do right. When I say thank you, this is what I need from you right now. This is what's not working for me. And what happens a lot of times in our communication is that he will just kind of completely shut down because he doesn't hear the positive or constructive feedback before he hears you are doing these things right, but these are the areas where I still think we need improvement. And when I was thinking about it today, just thinking about what we were going to do in terms of the podcast and, what we were going to focus on, I was thinking about how I'm able to do that with my staff. Like, these are the things that you guys are doing well. I so appreciate you. You're killing this. You're always able to pick up the slack here. And then I say, but these are the areas that I think we need to improve in. It's hard for me to do that when it comes to him. So I think when we talk about barriers and when we focus on constant expression of negative feelings, that's a huge barrier in our relationship, is that I'm not able to be congruent between work and home in the way that I convey what's working and the way I convey what I need in the relationship.
Another barrier to communication is making assumptions in communication. So making assumptions is fatal. And this happens a lot. And I see couples talk about this all the time. When you start a conversation, the other person assumes what you're going to say, right? Or they'll finish your sentence, your thought, before you even finish. And you're assuming something that may not be the way that they feel. And I believe that comes from experience. That comes from a place of, we had this conversation before.
People and
it comes from, we had this conversation before, so I'm going to finish your sentence. But what you don't realize is that sometimes in your previous conversation, that person may have thought about the conversation. Their feelings may have changed. Since that past conversation. So now, what you thought I was going to say, I actually have changed.
I may
even agree with you now.
That happens a lot in our conversations.
It's very vital to practice active listening when you're communicating with your spouse. Practice active listening. Listen to them without interruption. Even though you think you might, especially we've been married 14 years, so sometimes I'm like, I already know how she feels. So she's going to say the same thing she always say. I might get surprised. So it's important for me to actively listen. And but sometimes when you're in, that's why it goes back to, you have to pick the right timing for communication. Because when you're in the heat of any argument, that's not the right time. It's not. People's feelings are going to get hurt.
I don't understand. Say that again.
When you're in the heat of whatever it is that you want to talk about, when you're in the midst of it, everybody's emotions are riled up. The energy is high. I don't believe that is the right and the proper time to have a conducive conversation with a solution. That conversation is going to be more of yelling and arguing. Okay. I think that's important for adults to practice time out. You know what I'm saying? You're angry, I'm angry. Let's come back to this. You know what I'm saying? Because right now, see, Tiffany wants me to answer things right now. Like if she asks a question, she wants me to answer the question as soon as the last word leaves her mouth. And then if I don't answer the question, she's like, what you ain't got nothing to say? I'm like, let me think. Because if I just speak, as soon as you finish, I'm going to say the wrong thing. because I'm speaking from an emotional state. So I had to process this whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still practicing the 15,000 words. You know what I'm saying? And when all those words come out, I'm listening and I'm taking it in. I'm listening. I'm taking it in.
He thought
and it's like,
anybody.
when I snap because there's too many words being thrown at me at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I need to process this stuff. You said that already. Why are you saying it 7 times? You know what I'm saying? Like, all right, I heard you the first time. Let me process that first. So, going back to, don't assume what your partner going to say. Don't assume what your spouse is going to say. Just listen, practice active listening, and then go from there. And then be respectful, too. If you say, hey, can we come back? Don't say, no, I want to talk about this right now. That's not helpful. Mm-hmm. That's not gonna produce effective communication at all. If you have to respect the other spouse's wishes. You can't avoid the conversation. The conversation has to take place, but that may not be the perfect timing for that conversation. What's your thoughts about it, ma'am?
I agree. That's it.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one.
So another barrier to communication is the use of you statements rather than I statements.
So I want to jump in here. I teach this a lot in therapy about communicating without triggering people to become defensive. However, when I am talking to my husband, because of
she treat me different.
Yeah. Because of me getting emotional about whatever it is I'm trying to address with him, a lot of times I forget to use I statements. Sometimes I might start off well, but the moment he says something that is a trigger for me, it's like abort mission, jump ship. And I think what the issue is for me is like I'm one of those people, if you don't mean anything to me, if I don't have any type of interpersonal, I won't even say intimate relationship with you. And I see intimate relationship as not just my partner. It could be my child. It could be a best friend. If I don't have any type of deep, meaningful relationship with you, your opinion of me or your perception of me doesn't have much bearing on how I see myself in the world, right? But the moment I have some type of emotional tie to you, or emotional or intimate, deep connection to you, it really impacts my judgment. It really impacts, I think, my perception of self. And so when it comes to Lemar, I think when we're having conversations or when we're discussing things that ultimately lead to conflict, my issue is that I have an emotional connection to him, and sometimes I have a hard time being able to use the same things I teach other people, unfortunately. So I think that what I've recognized just thinking about, I hope we can use this audio, because you really messing with all this stuff and like you going in and out. I need you
finish
to
your statement, please.
I know, but I need you to be still.
Right.
One of the things that I have learned about myself is that it is very hard for me sometimes to practice what I preach. And I think what the biggest issue is that at work, in my day job, I exhaust a lot of energy. I exhaust a lot of patience being what I'm trying to help other people be. And sometimes when I get home, I'm tapped out. It's like a gas tank. We fill up our gas tank. That gas tank only holds so much fuel, right? And there comes a point where you've exhausted all the fuel and it has to be refilled. Well, for the clients or the demographics that I serve in my day job, a lot of them are not as stable. They require a lot of nurturing. They require a lot of patience and a lot of energy. And so sometimes if I've had a day where I've engaged with someone, where I've given them a lot of patience, I've given them a lot of my time and energy, when I make it home to my husband and my kids, I have depleted my patience, I have depleted my energy, and so I'm a little bit more short-tempered because I'm also very type A, and it's like, I need you to do what I need you to do. I don't want a whole lot of back and forth. I need it done. Let's get it done. This is what I need. I don't have time for the...
important.
And I understand that. But sometimes I feel like I don't have time for pleasantries. So what I've recognized...
Hold
on. No, just pleasantries, meaning being patient, being even-tempered. And so what I've come to recognize is that in order for me to be able to prioritize my family and give my family the best of myself, I'm going to have to give up exhausting that energy, in another area so that I have some of that energy stored up for my family. And so even though I love being a therapist, I love what I do in my day job, what I've come to recognize is that it does not leave me in the best emotional state when I come home, because I've depleted so much energy on people who are not as important as the people in my household.
So my main goal right now is to get you away from that day job. So the use of you statements rather than I statements, I think this is very important. Oftentimes when we get into arguments, we always see the other at fault. And sometimes that's why I think it's important to take that break, to actually sit back and you can come back and say, you know what? This is what I did. Mm-hmm. This is how I feel. This is how I contributed to the issue. And not always say, you did this and you did that and you did this. But hopefully the other person will also do the same. So when you use I statements, it actually makes you think about what role you played in the situation, rather than always blaming the other person. So think about that too when you're trying to have effective communication in marriage. Another barrier of communication is falling out of love. People don't like to think about that, but falling out of love impairs the bond in your relationship. When you fall out of love with somebody, I've seen this on numerous occasions with some of my clients, and just to hear them speak about their spouse in a way like they don't really care, it's very hurtful. And I'm kind of an empath, so when people talk about stuff like that, it kind of affects me a little bit, and I'm like, wow, like I hope that doesn't happen to me. And it can happen to the best of us. And that's one thing we have to realize, that we are not, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, huh? Oh, we're not shielded from these things. Like, these things can happen to us. Like the things we hear our friends going through, the things we hear our family going through. These things can happen to us. You may be deeply in love with the person that you're with today, and 15 years later you find yourself in that place where you were listening to your friend being in that place, and you're like, oh my God, am I here?
Hey, Carla.
Like, hey, Carla. Like, did I actually fall out of love with the person that I married? Or is this just like a thing? Like, is this a phase that I'm going through?
I think there's different levels to love, too. Like, the type of love I have for my husband is different from the love I have for my children. And that love for my children is different than the love I have for my mother. And that love is different from the love that I have for my best friend. You know? And so I think what falling out of love sometimes look like is falling out of care or concern or regard. Right?
Yeah.
I think we can get to a point where we're so disconnected from the person that we're in a relationship with that we fall out of we fall out of concern or care or regard for that person. And so I think what we have to focus on when we're talking about marriage or a long-term committed relationship is that you have to focus on what attracted you to that person. What was it that you liked? And just like when we go in job interviews and people ask us what our biggest weaknesses are, a lot of times I will tell people my greatest strengths are also my biggest weaknesses. You know, the fact that I am very strategic and methodical at work is a huge strength for me because I'm able to get tasks done. I'm able to have processes streamlined because I'm organized. I don't like my time being wasted, so I try not to waste other people's time. So I tend to show up on time for meetings and things of that nature. But because I focus on efficiency, because I focus on being organized, it's also a weakness for me, right? And so I think a lot of times in our relationship, the thing that draws us to each other can be the thing that also repels us from one another. I would say in our relationship, I feel like one of the things that I feel like might have attracted Lemar, and I'm 100% sure to me, is that I'm my own person. I march to the beat of my own drum. I do me. Like it, and I'm like, sometimes I flow with the wind. If I want to up and go to Mexico, I want to up and go to Mexico. Like, I can be very spontaneous. You know, there are times where I'm just super silly, right? But those are also some of the things that I think cause conflict in our relationship, is that, you know, there are times when I want to do what I want to do. And I don't really care what he got going on. It's like, yeah, I ain't doing it. This is what I'm doing, right? Which can be a source of conflict or contention in our relationship, because the same thing that attracted him to me is the same thing that upsets him when he's not in the space for it, right? And so sometimes, instead of focusing on the negative aspect or why that's not working for you at that time, we have to remind ourselves, you know what, even though this is annoying me right now, this is the reason that I really love this person, because they go after what they want, and it doesn't matter who is saying what they're saying or who's trying to hate on them. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that when we talk about staying in love or falling out of love, it has to do with focusing on what brought us together.
Yeah, but I think, like, when people fall out of love, communication is non-existent because you just don't care. You
But
don't
self-talk
care.
don't ever go away.
So you have to, so to prevent that, is you have to do things to keep your love life on fire. You have to do things to keep to keep your love life on fire. You have to do things to spice it up every once in a while, because it doesn't matter how bad you try to communicate with the other spouse. Once the love is gone, I don't want to say it's gone forever, but I think that's where a lot of cheating comes into play. When people feel like there's nothing else I have to say to this man. I don't care what he or she does, it's whatever. You know, and you don't want to get to that place in your marriage and then or relationship. So the best thing to do is keep the fire burning. Hey Gwen, what's up? Another barrier to communication is being defensive. So what that means is when a person is seeking answer, when a partner is seeking answers in a relationship, being defensive can create a barrier to communication, especially depending on what type of defensive you are. You know, so if I ask a question and this thing, you know, you coming at me like, why you always got to ask these questions? This. It made me want to stop asking you questions. Right? It's like, why can I ask you a question? You're my spouse. you're my wife, you're my husband, or you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend, I should be able to ask you a question without you being defensive. What do you feel about that?
I think that's true. I think this is where really being aware of your spouse's history also comes into play, because I think sometimes we don't take into account if people have worked through past traumas or past issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, like I remember hate to bring this up.
Don't bring it up.
I remember when me and Lemar was dating, and my sister had bought a new grill. He bought a new grill. She bought a new barbecue grill, and she asked him to help her put it together. And he put it together, and he studied the instructions, but he ended up putting on the legs.
I put it on backwards. Yeah.
Right? And I didn't think anything of it. We was laughing after we figured out what happened, because we couldn't figure out what was going on with it. Hey, Yvonne. Hey, Omar.
Yvonne. Omar, what up, though?
And so me and my sister started laughing, and after we left the house, like, I noticed that his mood changed. But after we left, he was really upset with me. And he was just, basically saying he didn't like the fact that I laughed at him for putting the barbecue grill together backwards. I didn't think anything of it.
Hold on, you left out a part, though. So, in this part, you probably didn't remember. So, my wife was pregnant at the time, and we were going through some issues before that. She left all that out. But, and she also left out the part when I asked her to help hold something. And she was like, no, I'm not helping you. Yes, I remember that. So I was like, I'm going to put this grill together the way it is, whatever way it get put together. You don't want to help? I got you.
Okay, I don't remember any of that, but I don't remember any of that, and it's probably because it didn't have an emotional impact on me, and it might have
like
had
it did with me.
Yeah, and
yes.
But what
and this
it
was
brought
before
up,
we got married. That's like years ago.
But what it brought up for him was things that his dad used to say to him, or statements that made him feel stupid. And that was the word that he used. And so I didn't think anything of it, laughing like, what in the world? Because we couldn't figure out, he kept trying to move it, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. And me and my sister was dying laughing.
It actually was just you. Because your sister was trying to figure out why you was laughing at me and didn't help.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Hey, you brought it up.
Anyway.
It was just you.
Okay, I was laughing to kill myself.
I was like, hey, hold this. You was like, no. I was like, I don't remember. You must have been mad at me about something. I don't know.
Probably. We was having issues. But what I will say about it was when he brought up the feeling that it triggered inside of him, I would have never known it.
That's right, Omar.
What he say?
It was important for you to help. It was important for me for you to help.
Yeah, so I'm not going to focus on that because we were still dating and it was a whole lot of stuff.
And you brought it up.
Yeah, I did bring it up, but I'm bringing that up just to focus on the part that my response triggered something that I was unaware of.
Yeah.
And so I think that, go back up to our point. I think that when we talk about people being defensive, we don't realize that sometimes if we say something in a certain manner, whether it's our tone, whether it's our face expression, the way that it was worded, it can trigger a feeling based on their past experience. Yeah. And
that's something that I had to recognize within myself. And that's the importance of therapy, right? Sometimes we have things within ourselves that our spouses are not aware of. And sometimes we had to get over the stigma about going to have therapy or counseling, because sometimes we need to be aware of all those issues that's in our tissues. Now, this going back to massage. I'm about to relate all this.
In y'all tissues.
So in massage, we say there's issues in the tissues, meaning muscle tissues. All the emotions and stuff that we don't bring out physically or that we don't take care of are stuck within our bodies. They're literally stuck within our bodies. So when something triggers that, it triggers an emotional response.
Hey, not just catering.
So triggering that emotional response causes me to maybe lash out or maybe feel a certain way, and your spouse is not even aware of what happened. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're not aware of what happened until you dig a little bit deeper. So it's very important that we work on our mental health as well as our physical health, so we can get those issues out of our tissues. Ooh, that was deep. I'm good. I'm good.
Somebody tune that on horn. But I think that is very, very important. And I think in a lot of relationships, like Omar said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. He has to work on that. And I think that is the case for us, that a lot of times when something is not said in the right way, it triggers things. So and even in our relationship, it can be things that are even positive. Sometimes we discount us saying positive things or trying to have positive engagement can trigger something bad. And an example I give is when I used to work at a psychiatric facility. When it came Christmas time, I was trying to get a particular kid to make a list of the top 3 things he wanted for Christmas, and he absolutely refused to do it. And I just couldn't understand. And I was like, look, put whatever you want. If you want $200 pair of shoes, put those shoes on this piece of paper. And he refused to do it. And he was like, can I just put this down? I think it was like a gift card for like Kids Foot Locker. And what he was like, if I get something, I'm just going to give it to my niece. Well, after the fact, when I came to him with a gift card that was specifically for him for Christmas to use on Christmas break, when he was visiting with his family, what he shared with me was that every Christmas he ended up being disappointed because his parents were not in a financial position to buy them Christmas presents. And so he stopped expecting things for Christmas. And so me trying to do something positive triggered a negative memory. So going to our relationship, I remember when we first got married, Lemar wakes up and he's in a good mood. I'm not
always in a good mood, pimp.
Not always, but I'm not a morning person. I've never really been a morning person. I like for my morning to start with the lights being dim, for the house to be quiet, and I like to get stirring before I feel awake. When he get up, he want to dance and he want to laugh and hug, and it would just agitate me. But it would trigger is when my dad used to wake me up when I was a little kid. He would always come and turn on the light, start banging on the wall and yelling. And so all of his motion triggered a childhood memory of how I did not like to be, walking up in the morning. And so
I'm going to tell you about a conversation I had with the kids this morning.
No, let's not go there.
Shut me down, dog.
So, because we need to move on for real. But I'm saying that to say that sometimes even good intentions... What you said?
Go ahead.
Sometimes even good intentions can trigger something bad. What did the kids say this morning? It better not be no foolishness either.
No, like you was mad this morning.
I was not mad.
Okay.
I just was tired. I was really tired.
Which caused you to act?
Short-tempered.
Okay. And we looked at that as being angry. And it was like everybody was trying to figure out what Mama was mad about. And the kids was like, I think she's just frustrated. I was like, what's she frustrated for? Just waking up, But I understood that you were tired. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the perception that everybody else around you could see, when they say that, how they say it? If the mom's not happy, nobody's happy. What's the saying?
Happy wife, happy life.
Yes, happy wife, happy life. Man, that is true. But anyway, the last barrier.
That's what I'm talking about with them little petty statements, though.
I didn't make that up. But the last barrier of communication is lack of quality time spent together weakens the connection. So like Omar, myself, Tiffany, we're all business owners, and sometimes when you're a business owner, it's sometimes so hard to have quality time with your spouse. Meaningful quality time where you're not always thinking about something else. You're not always thinking about something else you could be doing. You're not always thinking about an employee or whatever. But just taking the time out to make sure that you are connected to your spouse. Now, we've been married 14 years. right now we're about to start another counseling session. And I said another counseling session because I want you guys to know the importance of actually maintenance for your marriage. Just like we went to get our car tuned up today, we got to get our marriage tuned up. Sometimes we fall out of balance. Sometimes things get so hectic in our lives that we have to come back, sit back, and be like, hey, you know what? I think we need to go seek some counseling because the way the moon and stuff is shining right now is bringing out the werewolves and vampires in both of us.
Yeah. Hey, Katanya.
So we had to take that moment, and we're about to start on this counseling journey, coming up with a new therapist, and I'm really looking forward to it because I love going to therapy. I love learning about myself. I love learning about my spouse. I love the conversation. I love going deep within inside myself, and I need somebody else to help me do that. And I actually like going to therapy. She don't. Because they bring out the issues in her tissues.
No, I don't think that's why. I don't like the feeling of vulnerability. And I will subject myself to it because I realize as a therapist I'm always on the other end of it, but I really don't. Like, I'm one of those people who hate crying. I don't like to be tickled. I don't like anything where I feel like I have to relinquish control. And I recognize where a lot of that comes from. I recognize me even being a type A personality where that comes from. And so
you always have to be in control.
I always have to be in control. I don't like heights.
Literally, guys,
I don't like heights.
If I'm tickling her, she's angry. Laughing and angry at the same time. And I'm confused because I'm like, she's laughing, so I'm going to continue because she's laughing.
But
I'm thinking she's happy, but then she started throwing elbows and punches. I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like, you really want me to stop? Yeah. She would get mad at me. I was like, okay.
I hate being tickled. But I recognize that.
That's right, Nicole. Therapy is a tune-up.
Yeah, it is a tune-up. And we have been to therapy before. And I think the benefit for me, too, is I feel like I go through therapy constantly because, for one, the friends that I've surrounded in my life are not amen corner friends. But me being a therapist, I have also therapist friends. And I can say, okay, I need one of those therapy moments. I need to be able to talk to you about something. And they're honest with me. And this is what it sounds like I'm hearing you say. This is what it sounds like you're doing. Sometimes it helped me and sometimes it don't. And sometimes I just be like, I don't even want no feedback. I just need you to listen so I can get this mess off my chest.
So Erica made a book suggestion and I'm going to share it with you guys. It's called The Honeymoon Effect by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And we're going to kind of wrap up this podcast.
No, you just cut me off.
Oh, I'm sorry, baby.
Yeah, we are going to wrap up this podcast.
I knew you.
But made me forget my train of thought. Oh, so when it comes to therapy, I do think therapy is good and I think you should be open. But I also think that if you are opposed to therapy, you really have to do some self-assessment because you can't require your partner or your spouse to want to change or take ownership of whatever faults or areas of weaknesses that they have, and you're not willing to do the same thing. And a lot of times what therapy does is, a lot of times people think that therapists are in there telling you what to do or giving you advice, but as a therapist, our main role is to listen to what you are saying and basically relay that back to you. This is what I hear you saying, and this is what I hear, and this is what I think that you're saying you want to do. So it's basically someone to listen and translate your own emotions back to you. And when you're in a family or a marriage counseling setting, is basically to listen to all the parties, to hear what they're saying and help the other person hear what they're saying. So it's to translate what that person you're connected to is trying to communicate to you, and then help you guys kind of have a meeting of the mind or some type of compromise so that you're able to move forward in your relationship.
And I'm going to leave y'all with this. Like one of my mentor told me, sometimes we think we can fix ourselves, but if I've only learned that 2 + 2 = 4, and I'm trying to figure out how can I get more than 4, with my brain. And that's the only level that the only height of my brain has been to. How can I get there? Sometimes we need somebody on the outside looking in that's on a higher level of consciousness to help us see things in ourselves that we don't see. So just keep that in mind.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I also think that what therapy does for us is, I'm going to use your analogy, is sometimes that we think the only way you can get to 4 is by adding 2 plus 2. But reality, you can add 1 plus 3 or 3 plus 1.
Facts.
And so a lot of times when you go to therapy, I feel like me and Lamar's problem is we're both saying that we want to get to 4, but I'm saying 2 plus 2 and he's saying 1 plus 3. And what we are both saying is that we want to accomplish or get the same sum, but we're using a different equation to get there, and we can't understand how the other person's equation gives them the same sum.
Right.
And so,
man, that was deep.
Girl,
come on, see? We friends like that. She be calling me girl like.
Sometimes he my William, and anybody y'all watch Girlfriends, y'all know what that means. So, hey Teresa,
I'm so much cooler than William.
He is so much cooler than William.
All right, guys, it's been a really good conversation.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you guys to do is this is an exercise. I want you to go and look in the mirror and look into your eyes. If you have any questions, seek therapy.
If they had a question about what's in their eyes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Think about it. But try it out, because you're going to be like, what? That don't make sense. But it works. Go in the mirror, look at yourself. And what you will find, too, that some people can't even do it. And if you can't even do it, you need to seek therapy.
If they can't look at themselves in the mirror.
Some people cannot stare at themselves in the mirror.
Yeah.
So try it out. It's an exercise to try out. But in the meantime, guys, it was a joy speaking to you all. I really like the Facebook interaction along with the podcast recording. What you think?
I did too, but I think you just need to learn to be still, because all this new equipment, I'm pretty sure.
Being bossy.
I'm pretty sure there's some gaps in our podcast. So if y'all download the podcast, just bear with us. Hey, that's my job. My job is to make sure the podcast has good sound quality. So
that's why you need a type A person on your team.
Yes, that's why you need type A. So until next time, live your best life.
Living through your stress life. Peace.